And we are back on Open Line. We do appreciate you joining us this evening. A lot of you calling in, getting great legal advice from Kevin Kennedy, attorney Kevin Kennedy. If you just tuned in, this is Ask an Expert evening, and we are talking legal questions. So if you do have any of those questions, comments that you would like to make sure you get online with us as quickly as possible. The number's on your screen, 737-7587. We're going back to the lines right now. Reverend Fuzz is on with us. Reverend Fuzz, good evening. Do you have a question or a comment for Kevin?
I do. Let me say this is real quick. Number one, Kevin, I don't know if this is in your spirit. Now explain to us, if you will, what is meant and how it's practiced in Tennessee, separation of church and state. What does that entail? We hear that if I give the Secretary of State my Constitution and bylaws as a church, that the judge can decide and dispute in my church, but if they have my Bible and my church covenant as our bylaws and Constitution, it becomes outside its jurisdiction. I'm just asking, what are some of the parameters of separation of church and state, that tax-free stuff? We don't have to pay sales tax or property taxes. How does that play out in some of the cases in Tennessee? I've seen some judges say, okay, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, Reverend, I'm so appreciative of all the reverends. I've said it before. Those men make a difference in so many people's lives. They have nowhere to turn. So I salute you, I thank you, and I will address this. The separation of church and state never meant that the state was going to get involved into the church's business. Now, what has happened, Reverend? Over the course of this 200 years, that has been left for interpretation. And so if Chuck has an agenda, he's going to interpret it in his favor. Mr. Kennedy was your lawyer. He would interpret it, and I'm always going to side with the church. I really believe that. That's a subject near and dear to my heart. So, yes, when we have problems among people, how are you going to resolve it? There's canon law, which means church law. I've written a book, The Lord and the Law, and I got to evaluate all the different aspects of the law. You know, the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not murder, even all the murder, the homicide statutes are based on that, come out of common law. We have to take a historical perspective. If I were in front of the Supreme Court arguing, I would be giving them the same argument I share with you tonight. We have to go back historically. What did they really mean when they wrote this? And I would make my argument. Canon law is church law. All the laws have really been based on. And then we have statutorial law. That's when the legislature says we're going to put in a TCA that controls the church. I think you have a right many times to go back and have hearings outside when no one can agree. Then the courts are really the last option. And people sue the church all the time, so they're thrust inside there. But there's lots of constitutional rights, and they're open for interpretation for you to use in advance. And so if I was facing that, let me tell you one more. I'm on the roll again. They called me and said, Kevin, well, they're going to come over here and take the tax exemption away from our church. And I said, and they had a really good lawyer. And he said, the reason I've called you, they say they're going to march on your church when they get... And I said, good gracious. If they were to take the biggest church, no other church could stop them. And so he and I had one of these, and I said, well, you tell them they've awakened the giant when they march on the church. And they will face more legal and political pressure than they have ever known. He said, can I get a quote? I said, Kevin C. And I wasn't representing the church. And I went back and told the deacons, and I said, y'all can vote me out of the church, but as long as I'm here, this is the way we're going to fall. So, Pastor, I love to see people stand up for the rights of the church and others. That's our constitutional right. And if you don't stand, who will? And I was correct. I remember telling that lawyer, hold them at your church. He called me later. He said, Kevin, we held. But what does that really mean to you and me tonight? We held in our time, but they will march again some other time. Will there be people to stand up? I pray there will be. Thank you, Pastor.
Absolutely. So great advice there. Terrific. So we appreciate that, Reverend Fuzz. All right, right back to to the lines. Malachi is on the line with us. Malachi, we appreciate your patience. We are glad that you called in. And do you have a question or a comment for Kevin?
Hello?
Yeah. Go ahead, Malachi.
All right, my question is, what is the legal time to get an annulment of a marriage, and what are the penalties?
Okay. Well, the first off, annulment for marriage is a very limited scope. Many times when people have never consummated the marriage, then that's grounds for annulment. Another ground for annulment, if someone entered into the marriage and they were mentally incompetent, meaning they didn't have the mental ability to enter into a marital contract, that's another ground. So you should talk to a lawyer privately and find out if your circumstances would fit in and allow you to have an annulment. Many of the churches don't believe in divorce, but they would approve an annulment. So I've been down that road many times, and people really need help. We love to save marriage, can't save them all. In fact, I did the Oprah Winfrey show during the Persian Gulf War. It went across the Associated Press. I did more divorces than any lawyer in the nation. CNN called, and New York Times came and interviewed me. And I remember saying, we tried to save those marriages. They were shocked. But the truth is, we really did. We can't save them all. So I think that was what I was trying to share with you.
All right. Very good. We appreciate that call, Malachi. We're going back to the lines right now. Sonny is on the line with us. Sonny, we're glad that you've joined us this evening. And do you have a question for Kevin? You with us, Sonny? Okay, Sonny, can you hear us? All right, tell you what, we're going to try the next line. Mark, are you on the line with us?
Yeah.
Okay, Mark.
Go ahead, Mark.
Do you have a question for Kevin?
I was trying to get a gun
Permit, a handgun permit?
Sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to get a handgun, and my brother went down there and used his name. I can't get now the false identity, and I had to get fingerprinted with the TBI. They did a fingerprint and everything, and found out it wasn't me. And later on down the line, a few months later, I tried again, and they keep denying me for some reason.
Okay. Well, you can always appeal those decisions. There is a process that you can go and file in the court and ask them to clarify that and order it. Everyone's identity is being stolen all the time. We have it quite often where one brother gets pulled over and he says, well, who are you? Don't have information or identification. I'm Chuck Long. Well, Chuck didn't have anything to do with it, but it's created a problem for him on the criminal database. So you take your steps necessary. Keep pursuing. If you give up, it'll never be changed.
All right, so we do appreciate that call. All right, right back to the lines, getting to as many calls as we can this evening. We're going to Annette. Annette, thank you for calling this evening. Do you have a question for Kevin? Go ahead, Annette.
Okay, yes. Is there such a thing in Tennessee, the common law marriages? And I've been with this guy for 35 years, and we've never been married. We do not have any children together, and I was just wondering if something happened to him, can his people come in and get everything that he's got? He's got a house, but it's not in my name, it's in his name.
I'm with you.
Well, can they come in? His people come in and get the house?
Okay, let me share with you some of the laws in Tennessee. We don't really have a common law in Tennessee. If someone were living in other states that they do have a common law and they moved to Tennessee, for instance, if you were in another state and it was recognized, then Tennessee might recognize it under those circumstances. Number two, the reason why we have these laws in place because the courts and the law wants marriage. So they encourage people to marry. In the state of Tennessee, you can write your children out of a will. You don't have to give your children anything. You can't totally write your wife out. Your wife or husband has a right to dissent from the will and get 1/3. Now, there's a good argument that's going to be made that you didn't have any rights because your name wasn't on the deed. If you got a really creative lawyer, that lawyer is going to say that you have property rights. in that you put blood, sweat, tear, energy, money in that over the years. So do not say it's absolutely shut out, but if I were in your circumstances, I'd go talk to a lawyer, and I would talk to him saying, hey, don't leave me in the cold. Let's do something now.
All right, so very good to know. We appreciate that call, Annette. We are going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll get to more of your questions. You are watching Open Line.